with President Trump seemingly putting the full force of the federal government behind his attempts to undermine confidence in elections. This week, Jay Clayton, Trump's pick to serve as Director of National Intelligence, did little, very little, to instill confidence that he'd be any less of a bagman for the president's election conspiracies than the current acting DNI, Bill Pulte. Clayton, currently the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, has no national security, no intelligence experience, just like Pulte, the housing executive and Trump loyalist. At his Senate hearing this week, like so many Trump nominees before him, Clayton ducked questions from Democrats about whether Joe Biden won the 2020 election.
Who won the 2020 election?
I'm not going to do this with you.
Who won the 2020 election?
Like I said, I'm not going to get into that with you.
Who won the 2020 election?
I think I've answered the question. We can keep doing this.
Well, we're going to keep doing it because you're not being honest and forthright.
I'm not going to engage in the theater.
Who won the 2020 election?
I have answered the question.
Answer it. What is your answer?
I've given you my answer.
What is your answer? You refuse to answer a basic question about who won a presidential election, but you asked to lead America's intelligence community?
Joining us now are Vivian Zalama, staff writer for The Atlantic, and David Rohde, MS Now senior national security reporter. So, David, to you first. You heard that back and forth. Who won the 2020 election? And Clayton couldn't answer it. Given this is happening, Clayton is refusing to answer that question at the same time that the president is peddling conspiracy theories with an eye towards the midterms. What's the overall impact here when you're looking at the intelligence community?
It's essentially, and then this was a later question to Clayton, will he, let's say, declare that he has evidence that China has hacked into voting machines in Fulton County, Georgia, the Democratic stronghold that could decide the Senate race in Georgia, and show up on Election Day with FBI agents and say he needs to seize voting machines or voting records for an investigation? And the reason they're asking that is because that's exactly what Tulsi Gabbard did earlier this year. She showed up with FBI agents. They seized voting records for 2020. And she said under oath to Congress that the president instructed her to go. So when he was asked, would you go to Fulton County or any county and be part of such a raid, which is illegal under federal law, he also said he didn't answer the question. And then he also said later, I haven't even thought about that before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there was just astonishment from the members of the Senate. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Right. And David, to that point, let's play that moment in the hearing when Senator Ossoff grilled him about Tulsi Gabbard showing up in Georgia.
The first time you learned that Director Gabbard was present at that raid was in my office yesterday?
It was the first time that in my recollection I've thought about it recently. Now, was I aware of it before?
What? Are you aware that former Director Gabbard testified that her presence at the raid was, quote, requested by the president?
I'm not aware of that until now.
If the White House Chief of Staff or the president asks you to travel somewhere across the United States and oversee the execution of a domestic search warrant on a sensitive election facility, will you do it? Is that appropriate? Is that appropriate for the Director of National Intelligence?
That's a hypothetical.
I mean, David,
not hypothetical.
It's not a hypothetical. I mean, just you brought it up. We showed it. Your reaction.
That is incredibly alarming. There is a 1948 federal law that bans armed federal soldiers or federal officers from going anywhere near an election site. This is what the Constitution says. State and local officials control elections. The idea was that the president shouldn't count the votes because if the president's trying to get reelected or trying to defend his party's control of Congress, the president could try to manipulate the election. So this has never been done. What Tulsi Gabbard done has never been done in American history. And to have the person who's essentially applying to serve, to do her job, claim he'd never even thought about it. There was a follow-up just last week where Senator Warner, the ranking Democrat, who knows Pulte, he said, I know you. you know, and I've known you for years. He's like, did you not think of being asked this question about going to an election site as you were preparing for this hearing? And he said, no, I didn't really think about it again. And Warner was just visibly shocked and said he was bitterly disappointed with the answers that Pulte gave to these questions.
You mean Clayton?
Clayton, there it is. I'm conflating acting from nominee.
There's a lot of DNIs.
Easy to conflate them because neither of them have any experience. You know, Jay Clayton don't have no experience. Bill Pulte has no experience. None of them do, despite the fact the statute, Vivian, says that they have to have it. When you details, yeah, who cares?
And the law.
Have we ever in this country, when you think about the DNI, they haven't been around that long. Had to think so much about how a DNI would engage in a domestic election, other than to think about how they would protect the country from foreign interference, etc. But that is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the concern about foreign interference and also interference from the federal government.
I mean, we're literally, it's completely outside the boundaries of what the DNI is supposed to do. The DNI was created in the post 9/11 era to oversee and to coordinate between the intelligence agencies. That is the DNI's job. As David just said, elections have always been regarded as a domestic issue, something that the states adhere to. But what the Trump administration is doing right now is they are turning this into a national security issue. And going back also to your previous segment about the president's speech on Thursday night, they are now turning elections into a national security issue and saying that it is within the auspice of the federal government to try to dictate what happens. As a result, you then weaponize various federal agencies like DHS, like the FBI, and like ODNI to then interfere in this, to oversee it, to try to basically get involved and take over the process. And that has huge implications, obviously, all overseas, where governments like in Russia and Iran and China have long felt that this concept of Western democracy is hypocritical. And now you have the federal government undermining the process, both in terms of the words of the president, but also in terms of the agencies then being weaponized to take over these elections. It's very dangerous. It sets a very alarming precedent.
Both words and actions. And, you know, when the federal government starts yelling national security, they think they can basically just do whatever they want.
And people believe it.
Yes, every time, because we don't understand. Not everybody knows everything about it.